Did you know that Newcastle had a $6 million deficit in their insurance? And this has been an ongoing problem for several years, continuing to add up over the years, and even having one councilman state that it could reach $7 or even $8 million in the near future. So today I'm going to address this issue, not as an insurance issue, but as a budget issue. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to read to you an article that I wrote and do a little commentary in between. All right, so let's go ahead and go to my Substack blog, which you can subscribe to. You can go to my website, claymorganformayor.com, and go down to the bottom of the homepage, and there's a place that you can subscribe to my Substack blog, which I post a blog every Tuesday and just kind of write out into small detail some of my thoughts. So here we go. Let's talk about this deficit. So this article is titled "When Surprises Happen," and why there should be no big surprises. So it reads like this. If memory serves me right, it was late November of 2018. The Henry County Council was holding a regular monthly meeting. It was during this meeting that the council was informed that we had fallen short $780,000 in the insurance fund. And we had 1 month to come up with that money. So the council was completely surprised. Now, it could be said that it was the council's fault for not knowing this, and that accusation would be accurate. In county government, the council is a responsible body for almost all fiscal matters. And I can't defend my ignorance on that. I can only say that during that time, there was one commissioner that held tight to all matters concerning county insurance. Because of the way the county auditor of that time, not the current county auditor, handled matters of this nature in cooperation with that commissioner, the council was not informed until the very last minute. And then, just like that, it was now our problem to solve. So in the short version of how we ended that was that the county council borrowed funds from the highway department and the surveyor's office to cover the shortfall. And then we had the funds paid back in full by June of 2019. And then because of this situation, the 2019 council then sprung into action, took appropriate oversight of the insurance fund, and they budgeted accordingly for the remainder of my service on the county council. I tell you this event to give you perspective as you listen to the rest of this article. The reality is that in government, like in any business or even our own family budgets, there are occasional deficits. However, huge untimely deficits should not stun those who are impacted and or responsible to cover those deficits. So though there is grace for error, many times such huge deficits are the result of either incompetence or a lack of transparency. And in my experience in government, most of the time, it is due to a lack of transparency. So what begins to happen is revenue can be shuffled from this item to that item, but it can only be shuffled for so long before the shortfalls can no longer hide. In the Courier Times article, dated November 8th, 2022, the article was titled, "City's Debt Remains in Focus." A Newcastle resident and a city councilman both spoke in frustration as they were stunned to find out the city was carrying a $6 million insurance deficit, with the councilman adding, "I was kind of blindsided." Again, that brought back some memories of my time on the Henry County Council. To me, a council member, an elected council member, be it county or city, should not be blindsided that the city is carrying a $6 million deficit. So the fact that this councilman actually made that statement shows that there's some trouble in the budgeting practices. Later in the article, another city council member acknowledged that the debt was even approaching $7 or $8 million. Though according to the article, the city has been experiencing a growing deficit in this area over the past few years, the Newcastle mayor stated that finances are trending in the right direction. Though I understand that there are seemingly multiple inefficiencies, even in the most transparent budget, it seems that for the past few years at least, something is not quite right. In a July 23rd, 2020 article, okay, so this is what, 2.5 years ago, roughly, July 23rd, 2020. In this Career Times article, it was called Deferring Accounts of City Finances. Daryl Radford wrote this, and I quote, "Verbal battles continue to rage Monday night between some members of the City Council and Mayor Greg York over how city finances are handled." The article goes on to cite the various contentions between the City Council and the mayor, with one council member even stating the term, and I quote, "illegal" fits his perspective. Another recent Career Times article, this one was dated just last year, October 17th of 2022. Again, this is not a new problem. This has been an ongoing issue. City budget pulled down by $6 million insurance fund. It begins with this sentence. The city of Newcastle ended 2021 with more than $8.6 million overdrawn, according to the Indiana State Board of Accounts. This article also cites that $6 million insurance deficit was the main culprit. However, what this does is give some insight to the transparency practices and the wisdom of using transparency when it comes to the budget. Just keep things above the table, keep everybody on the same page, keep everybody informed. From the mayor to the clerk treasurer to the city council, everybody should know what's going on when the city is carrying such a massive deficit. And here's to show that it was no new problem. The city clerk treasurer stated this. This has, and this is a quote, this has been going on, or excuse me, let me quote it exactly as it says. This has been an ongoing thing for years and years and years and years. This is what Brenda Grider said, the clerk treasurer. One council member stated that they do not believe that the appropriate amount is being budgeted, while adding this, and I quote, "We, the city council members, never were made aware of the difference between what was needed and what was budgeted." So again, there's just, according to what we're reading here, according to the information I've gathered, according to those that I've spoken to, it just seems that there's simply not a clear mode of communication and a transparent budget practices. If I'm wrong, I'm willing to be wrong. But in my experience in dealing with government budgets, it's clearly someone's not communicating with someone. And and I go on to write, with the complexities of local government budgets, it is unfortunately common to show $1 to $2 million in the red a couple of times a year. That is normal. We experience that on the county, and there's a reason for it. It's not that I like it, but there is a reason for it. This is due to the way reimbursements and tax revenue from the state of Indiana are deposited into the local accounts. However, the insurance problem does not fit into that scenario. Again, that's a budget problem. We dealt with it on the county. We simply were not budgeting enough money to cover the insurance for our employees. And again, thankfully in 2019, the council took the bull by the horns, and we began to take an aggressive approach, an open approach, a transparent approach. We opened it up to county employees. We spoke to everybody, and we began to budget properly. We made some adjustments, and everything ended up working out. So now it's completely budgeted, as last I knew. And we all know healthcare is an ongoing issue. So again, this insurance problem in the city, it doesn't fit the issue of the state deposits coming in once or twice a year. It's definitely a budget issue, definitely 100% a budget issue. So what is telling is that open communication and total transparency in certain budget decisions are lacking. And this, again, here's where I state, as a former county council member, the quotes in the previous paragraph are, as the saying goes, worth 1,000 words. So if the pattern established does not change, it will inevitably have a negative impact on you, the taxpayer. Because when the government carries a $6 million deficit, let me say it this way, when the government carries any deficit, it's you, it's us, the taxpayer, that carries that deficit because you are the government. The government doesn't create things to receive revenue. The government taxes. And so when that burden needs to be dealt with, that's the taxpayer that's dealing with that burden. So when you read or hear that the city of Newcastle is carrying a $6 million deficit, what that's saying is it's you, the taxpayer, that is carrying a $6 million deficit. At some point, it's got to be paid. Again, according to the quotes from the clerk treasurer, this has been an ongoing issue for years and years and years and years. This deficit, even one of the council members that had stated, again, you can go back and read all those articles in the Courier Times, but the council member that stated they were blindsided even mentioned that they knew a couple years ago they were about $5 million short, and was surprised to find out after they were told that everything was okay. They were surprised to find out now they're $6 million short. So again, you can imagine that would be a surprise. So if it doesn't change, it's going to have a negative impact. In Newcastle city government, it is the mayor that carries the main responsibility of the budget. I've talked to city council members over the years, even while I was on the county council, and even currently talking to some of the city council. They all tell me they've confirmed that in the city government, it's mainly the mayor that has the authority in budget matters. The council passes a budget, but they have little say in appropriating that budget. And again, that's not based on my experience in city government. I don't have city government experience. That's based on what I've been told by people who do have city government experience. So, because they would always tell me that, because when we would talk and stuff at different meetings when I was on the county council, they would always tell me that the way the city functions, the city council functions, is different than the county council functions. So anyways, let me finish up. I'm almost done with this article. So again, in Newcastle city government, it is the mayor that carries the main responsibility of the budget. The buck stops here is an accurate description of this responsibility. So if I am elected as your mayor, one thing that I promise, it's one of my top four, big goals, top four big goals. But this is definitely one of them. If elected as your mayor, I will immediately begin the process of untangling our current financial deficiencies. And transparency is going to be a core value of my administration. And I will openly work with the city council and the city clerk treasurer, the ones that you elect for those offices. Because that's just it. You not only do you elect the mayor, you also elect those other offices. So it's our responsibility to work together, to be transparent with each other, to be open with each other, to be honest with each other, because we all have to be on the same page to make this thing run. If not, you run into problems like they did in that one council meeting where all of a sudden it's, hey, we have a $6 million deficit and everybody's jaws drop. How do we pay for that deficit? What's being done? To be honest with you, I don't know. But I think it's a question that needs to be asked. I think it's an issue that needs to be addressed during budget time. So how does it get addressed? Well, based upon the knowledge I have on government budgets, one thing that needs to take place is this year in 2023. The mayor needs to make that a priority and begin the process of bringing that deficit down. There may be some things that he's not able to do. There may be some things he wants to spend money on that he may not be able to spend money on at this time, because that deficit is your deficit. It's not just the city of Newcastle's deficit. That's your deficit. And so that's why it's vitally important to get some of this straightened out. So anyhow, again, on my Substack, I write another article about transparent budgets, budgeting practices. I write about some of my experiences on the county council and some of the ways that I had worked and championed good financial practices and to be a good steward over the taxpayers' money, and how also I was very transparent in those practices, very open with everyone that I worked with, and even called into question many of our practices in the county that deserve to be questioned. So anyhow, this is the long form version of the YouTube video. I'll put out a few short clips, but if you have made it this long and have watched this whole video, write in the comments, what do you think? Is a $6 million deficit a big deal or not? Does it really matter? Is it important? Should it be a priority? You are the ones that's going to have to decide that, because you're the one that it's going to impact. So if you think it's a priority, if you think it's a big deal, comment below and share this video. If you don't think it's a big deal, if you're not worried about it, if you're not concerned, if you're satisfied with the way things are, then leave that comment. Let me know that you're satisfied, because that's the main thing we want to know. We want to know what you want, because you're the one that calls the shots.